They threw her out at dawn. No ceremony, no soft words. Just the slam of a door, the hiss of cold wind, and the sharp, metallic thud of a latch being bolted from inside. May tumbled backward into the snow, the weight of the satchel they'd tossed after her striking her chest like a final insult. A muffled voice from behind the door, her mother-in-law's, called out something about sin and shame, but May barely heard it. Her ears rang. Her belly ached. Her unborn child kicked. She stood slowly, snow clinging to her skirt and the torn hem of her shawl. The street was silent. The town hadn't stirred yet, just a few crows picking at yesterday's garbage and smoke curling lazy from chimney tops. The church bell hadn't rung. No one came to help. No one dared. Her husband's grave was 3 days old. 3 days since the mine collapsed and turned her world to rubble. 3 days since she'd clung to his blood-soaked shirt, refusing to let go until someone pried it from her fists. They hadn't even waited for the dirt to settle before calling her a stain on their good Christian name. Whispers behind her back turned into glares. Glares turned into accusation. She carries the devil's seed, someone had spat. Because he was blonde and blue-eyed and she was not. Half Cheyenne, half nobody. That's what she was now. Not wife. Not daughter. Not kin. May held her head high, though her legs trembled beneath her. She walked past the church, the one she wasn't allowed to enter without whispered prayers for her soul. The old priest, Father Jennings, stood sweeping snow off the chapel steps. He met her eyes. She thought maybe, just maybe, he'd say something. A blessing. A sorry. Anything. Instead he turned away. Her boots were too tight. They'd belonged to her husband's sister, a woman who hated her from the moment they met. The leather pinched at her ankles with every step, but she said nothing. She made it to the edge of town before the nausea hit. Bile burned her throat as she knelt behind a thicket, retching until there was nothing left in her but shivers. The child stirred again. Not a flutter. No, this time it was a full kick. Like he knew. "I'm not giving up," she whispered, wiping her mouth with a shaking hand. Not for them. Not for anyone. The snow deepened as the land stretched out before her. No carriage. No horse. Just the satchel, the clothes on her back, and the wilderness. She kept walking. By midday her fingers were stiff and purpled. Her lips cracked. Hunger gnawed at her insides, but it was thirst that made her dizzy. She passed a dry creek, then a rusted sign half buried in the snow. The wind howled across the empty plain, carrying with it a sound she didn't like. A low, long moan that might have been the wind. Or a coyote. Maybe both. May staggered onward. She lost track of the time. The sun moved behind a thick veil of gray clouds. Her shawl, thin as lace, did little against the cold. She tried singing, songs her mother had taught her in a language she barely remembered, but even that slipped away. She spoke to the baby instead. Told it stories. Promised it better days. Promised herself the same. Dusk came with teeth. Her legs gave out. She collapsed near a cluster of dead mesquite bushes, her breath sharp and shallow. Snow settled over her like a second skin. Her vision blurred. The sky above shifted in colors she couldn't name. For a moment she thought she saw her husband, standing at the edge of the trail, arms open, smiling like he used to before the mine took everything. She reached for him. Her fingers moved through nothing. Something warm coiled around her ankle. She gasped. Twisted. A hiss, a dry rattle, and then pain white-hot and stabbing. A rattlesnake, hidden beneath the brush. It struck once, then vanished into the dark like a curse fulfilled. She cried out, clutched her leg. Already the skin was swelling, the wound a pair of angry puncture marks above her boot. Panic swelled in her throat. The child kicked again. Not as strong this time. She dragged herself beneath a boulder outcrop, curling into a ball. The snow thickened. The pain sharpened. Her hands, once graceful and capable, trembled as they tried to press fabric against the wound. She prayed. Not to any god she'd been taught, but to something older, something wild. The sky. The wind. Her mother's voice. Then, stillness. Not death. Not yet. But the edge of it. Shadows moved at the corners of her vision. Shapes in the dark that could have been ghosts or coyotes, or her own mind slipping. Then footsteps. Soft. Measured. Not boots. Not hooves. Bare feet on snow-packed dirt. She tried to lift her head. Couldn't. The figure knelt beside her without a word. Rough hands pressed against her leg. A cool poultice touched her skin. Something fragrant filled her nostrils, earthy and strong. Herbs. She tried to speak. Her voice came out a whisper. Don't take the baby. Please. A voice answered. Oh, steady. Mel. I take nothing that wants to live. And then sleep claimed her. But it wasn't the cold kind. Not yet. The scent of smoke was the first thing she noticed, sharp, acrid, and clean. It wasn't the choking kind from chimney soot or burning brush. It was sacred somehow. Controlled. Intentional. Her eyelids peeled open slowly, like lifting curtains soaked in rain. A low ceiling above her, made of knotted wood and sinew. The flicker of firelight danced along the walls, casting long shadows. A steady crackle hummed beside her. She blinked again. She wasn't dead. May shifted, and the pain in her leg returned like a vengeful ghost. She gasped. The wound throbbed, hot, pulsing, but not unbearable. Her boot was gone. Her leg wrapped in something soft and damp, smelling of crushed herbs and bark. Her hand trembled as she reached down to touch the bandage. A voice stopped her. Don't. It came from the far side of the fire. Come. Not demanding, just certain. She turned her head and saw him. He sat cross-legged, elbows on his knees, palms near the flame as though the fire spoke directly to him. Dark hair streaked with gray, tied back with a strip of faded cloth. His eyes were sharp, like twin coals in a dying campfire. He looked older than her, but not frail. His posture spoke of strength, measured, quiet strength. I cleaned it, drew out the poison, he said. You'll live. May tried to sit up. Her head spun. Where? You're in my winter camp. Southridge. Away from your town. You walked far. Foolish distance for someone carrying more than just herself. Her hand flew instinctively to her belly. Still there. Still moving. A kick, faint but certain. She let out a shaky breath. You're Cheyenne, she said, voice brittle. He gave a slight nod. And you are not. I'm half. That half nearly got you killed. I didn't ask for help, she snapped. You cried for it. His gaze didn't waver. Neither did the silence that followed. She shifted again, wincing. What did you give me? Yarrow. Smoke root. And prayers. May stared at the fire. Prayers don't help. He stirred the coals with a stick. They don't help quickly. For a long moment, nothing moved. The fire popped. Outside, the wind howled low and mournful, like it had been searching for her and lost the scent. He stood and walked to a carved shelf tucked into the wall. From it, he took a clay bowl, poured water from a bladder, and handed it to her. She drank. It was cold and clean. The first good thing in days. What's your name? She asked. Toka. Is that Cheyenne? He nodded once. Means two wolves. May swallowed. Why would you help me? You were dying. I don't like death inside my camp. You don't even know me. I know desperation. I know what it looks like when a person gives up. I wasn't, she caught herself. Swallowed again. Maybe I was. He sat back down. You left the town with nothing but a satchel. No food. No coat. That's not just grief. That's surrender. May clenched the blanket tighter around her shoulders. They threw me out. My husband's family. Said the child would bring shame. Sin. Typical settler fear. His eyes narrowed. Fear of what they don't understand. She studied him. You don't seem afraid of anything. He almost smiled. I've lost more than most. You stop being afraid when there's nothing left to lose. She nodded slowly. Same. He didn't answer. The wind outside picked up, brushing snow against the hide walls with a soft hiss. May looked around the shelter. Simple, circular, a single opening at the top where smoke curled into the pale sky. A small woven basket near the wall held dried berries and jerky. How long have I been here? She asked. 2 nights. May blinked. 2. You were fevered. Rambled in your sleep. Something about a wedding dress and a broken jar. She looked away, cheeks flushed. My mother's jar. It broke when I told her I married him. She didn't want you to? She didn't want me gone. Her voice cracked. But I did it anyway. Thought I was choosing freedom. And instead, I ended up in the snow, begging the wind not to take my baby. Toka stirred the fire again. The world doesn't forgive easily. But sometimes it listens. May pressed her palm to her belly again. She stopped. I think it's a boy. Toka's eyes flicked to her hand. Names matter. You choose one yet? No. I didn't think I didn't plan this. You plan nothing. But everything still comes. The quiet stretched again. But it was different now, not cold, not tense. Like a silence shared between two people who'd already said enough. May reached slowly for the bowl of water again. Her fingers still trembled. Thank you. For helping. You'll repay it, he said. She stiffened. Not with coin. With time. With listening. May nodded, unsure what that meant but understanding the weight in his voice. She looked at him again, really looked, saw the faded scars beneath the collarbone, the edge of a burn at his wrist, the wear in his hands. He was a man who had given more than he'd taken. A man who didn't ask questions unless the answers mattered. The fire flared suddenly as he tossed in a handful of dried leaves. A sharp, pungent scent filled the air. "What is that?" she asked, coughing lightly. "For spirits," he said. "And protection." "From what?" Toka didn't answer. Instead, he stood, walked to the flap of the shelter, and pushed it aside just enough to peer outside. Then he spoke, voice low and tight. "Smoke. Riders." May felt her heartbeat skitter. "From the town?" "Maybe. Drunken. Loud. Clothes." He turned back to her. "They're looking for something. Or someone." May's skin went cold despite the fire. "They think I stole from them. Or ran." "Did you?" "No. Won't matter." She struggled to rise, heart pounding. "We have to run." Toka shook his head. "Too late." "Then what?" "You stay. You don't move." His voice was calm again but deadly sure. "I walked toward them." May gripped his arm without thinking. "They'll kill you." He looked down at her hand. Not angry. Not surprised. Just quiet. "Let them try." Then he stepped outside into the snow, the flap closing behind him. May sat frozen, heart thudding in her ears. She couldn't see him anymore. Couldn't hear what he'd say. But she knew one thing, clear as thunder on a clear day. He wasn't walking out there to die. He was walking out there for her. Snow crunched beneath boots. May crouched low beside the fire pit. Her fingers clenched around the grip of a worn knife Toka had laid near her sleeping mat. Her breath came shallow, every sound from outside echoing too loudly inside her skull. The walls of the shelter felt thinner now, as if the canvas and hides weren't meant to protect but trap. Muffled voices drifted through the wind. 3 men, maybe 4. She recognized the slurred drawl of Harold Brink, her husband's cousin. "Mean as a rattler and twice as stupid. Swear I saw her tracks. She's out here, half-breed whore." May's chest tightened. Every syllable rolled over her like mud. They hadn't just come to bring her back. They came to punish her. Toka's voice was calm, firm, and close now. "You'll turn back." A scoff. Then a sneer. "You harboring her? That little squawbelly from town?" Silence. "The kind that bristles." "I said turn back," Toka repeated, slower this time. "Don't think you understand, old man. She stole from my kin. Ran off pregnant too. If she's here, she ain't yours to keep." "I keep no one." "But you step 1 inch closer and you'll leave in pieces." May heard the thud of a footstep. Then another. Then a scream. It wasn't long. Just one cry, followed by the sounds of a scuffle, grunting, cursing, boots skidding in packed snow. Then the distinct, sickening crack of bone meeting bone. May stood, limp toward the entrance. She pushed aside the hide flap just enough to see through the slit. Toka stood alone in the clearing, snow swirling around him like ash in a battlefield. At his feet, 2 men lay moaning. One clutched his arm, bent at an unnatural angle. The other was spitting blood, jaw slack. A third man scrambled backward on hands and knees, face pale with the kind of fear that doesn't fade fast. "You come here again," Toka said to him, "and you won't walk away." Harold didn't speak. He stumbled to his feet, yanked the others up, and fled into the trees, leaving only blood in the snow and their stink in the wind. May let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Toka didn't look back. Not at first. He stood in the snow for a long moment, letting the silence return. When he finally stepped back inside, the light caught his face, his cheekbone bruised, a shallow cut on his temple. "You're hurt," May said, rushing forward. He brushed it off. "Not bad." She reached for a cloth anyway, dipping it into the water bowl and dabbing his wound. He let her. "I told you they wouldn't listen," she whispered. "And I told you I'd make them. You could have been killed." He met her eyes. "But I wasn't." May looked away, jaw tight. "They'll come back." "They might," he agreed. "But not tonight." She dropped the cloth and stepped back. Her limbs were shaking now. The aftermath had caught up to her, terror delayed by survival. Toka sat near the fire and motioned for her to do the same. She obeyed, slowly, curling herself around her belly like a shield. The firelight flickered across their faces. For a long time neither spoke. Then gently he said, "You held the knife wrong." She blinked. "What?" "When I left it beside you. You held it like a kitchen tool, not a weapon." She laughed, dry and bitter. I'm not a fighter. You'll need to be. He stood and pulled a small bundle from a shelf. He unwrapped it, two short knives curved slightly, their handles wrapped in hide. He set one in her lap. May stared down at it. What am I supposed to do with this? Learn. She picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. The blade felt foreign in her hand, but the weight felt right. He showed her how to hold it, where to brace her thumb, how to move with her hips, not her arms. They practiced slow at first, her movements clumsy and stiff. But she listened. She learned. When her fingers cramped, he stopped. When her breath faltered, he let her rest. She expected mockery. None came. You were scared, he said. She nodded. Still am. But you stayed quiet. That matters. She looked into the fire. I wanted to scream. But I thought, if they heard me, they would have killed you. And the baby. Toka's eyes softened. But they didn't. May swallowed hard. You didn't have to fight for me. I didn't fight for you, he said. I fought for the quiet, for the land, for the rules. She looked at him, unsure what he meant. He added, and maybe for you a little. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. It faded quickly, but not entirely. They sat in silence again, but this time it was warmer. Later, after the fire burned low and May curled beneath her blanket, Toka sat alone, sharpening the knife he hadn't used that day. His hands moved automatically, the whetstone hissing with each pass. May watched him from half-lidded eyes. You lost someone, she said softly. He didn't look up. My wife. My son. 7 winters ago. White traders came promising peace. They brought fire instead. May pressed her palm to her belly. I'm sorry. He paused. You learn to live with ghosts, but you don't invite them to stay. She wanted to ask more but didn't. The next morning the snow was melting. Not fast, but enough to show the first hints of grass beneath the frost. A sign. May stepped outside the shelter for the first time since arriving. Her breath fogged in the cool air, but the sky was clearer now. Brighter. Toka joined her. You still think I'm not a fighter? She asked, shielding her eyes against the sun. He handed her the knife again. We'll find out. May glanced down at the blade. The reflection caught her face, dirty, bruised, tired, but alive. They both turned when the wind shifted. Smoke in the distance. Not from a hearth. Thick, dark, rising fast. Riders. Fire. Not here, not yet, but close. Toka stared into the horizon. They're not after you this time. Then who? Others. Nearby camps. My people. May's voice dropped. Are they safe? No one's safe when fear rides with a torch. She looked at him, then down at her belly. We can warn them, she said. Toka raised an eyebrow. We. I may not fight like a warrior, she said, but I'll fight for the ones who didn't leave me in the snow. He didn't speak, but something in his gaze shifted. Respect. Maybe something deeper. The wind carried the smoke closer, and the blade in her hand no longer felt like a stranger. May's breath came in bursts as they ran, her boots slipping across thawing snow and dirt. She hadn't moved this fast since before the baby started to show, but urgency made her legs forget the weight, forget the pain. Smoke curled into the sky like a signal, wide, dark, uncontrolled. It wasn't a campfire. It was destruction. They crested a ridge, and below it, nestled in a low hollow near the tree line, the first tents of the Cheyenne camp flickered with orange light. A raid was already in motion. Toka didn't hesitate. He dropped low and signaled silently, eyes scanning the trees. May followed, her fingers tightening around the small blade he'd taught her to use. Her heart pounded in her ears, but she wasn't afraid, not like before. She was focused. Riders circled the camp. White men with red bandanas pulled over their faces, their coats dirty with soot and pride. They hooped and fired into the air, reveling in the terror they spread. She spotted children huddled beneath overturned baskets, women clutching each other as they scrambled toward the woods. One figure, older, lay sprawled near a burning tent, unmoving. Toka moved fast, disappearing between the trees, striking like a whisper. A man dropped from his horse with a gurgle, the blade lodged deep in his neck. May watched, frozen for a moment, then snapped out of it as a rider turned toward a group of children fleeing across the field. She didn't think. She ran. The knife trembled in her hand, but her legs didn't stop. The rider raised his pistol, ready to shoot. May screamed and hurled a rock at his head. It struck the brim of his hat, knocking it aside. Not enough to wound, but enough to startle. He turned toward her with a snarl. Too close. He kicked his horse forward, barreling toward her. May dropped and rolled to the side, nearly crushed by hooves. The man turned again, circling to make a second pass. A boy cried behind her. Maybe 6. Alone. May stood between him and the oncoming rider. She drew the knife, planted her feet. A gunshot rang out. The rider fell sideways, blood blooming across his chest. Toka stepped from behind a tree, rifle still smoking. He nodded once toward her. Not praise, not relief, just understanding. May scooped the boy into her arms and ran toward the thickets at the edge of the camp, where others had started gathering. A girl no older than 10 pulled at her sleeve. My mother, she's still in the tent. May didn't pause. She passed the boy to the girl and turned back, smoke thick in her lungs. She moved fast, coughing, eyes stinging. She pushed into the tent and found the woman beneath a fallen support beam, struggling to breathe. I've got you, May said, voice rough. The woman's eyes widened. You're not one of us. May smiled faintly. But I'm here. She braced her shoulder against the beam and shoved. It didn't move. She repositioned, groaning, feeling the burn in her thighs and back. Again. It gave an inch. One more. The woman slipped free. May helped her to her feet and half-dragged her out into the clearing, just as a final tent collapsed behind them. Together they stumbled toward the tree line, where the rest of the camp had begun to rally. And then the gunfire stopped. Not all at once, but it died down, thinning into isolated shots, then silence. Toka walked into view, blood splattered across his shirt. He was limping slightly, a slash across his forearm, but alive. Around him, the last 2 raiders were tied and bound by Cheyenne men with grim faces. May leaned against a tree, panting. Toka approached her, eyeing her from head to toe. You bled, he said. Not mine, she answered. Mostly. He nodded. You fought. So did you. May glanced toward the burned tents, the smoke rising in bitter columns toward the sky. We saved who we could. That's all we're ever asked to do. A woman approached them, a tall elder with white braids and eyes like carved stone. She looked May over, then Toka, then the camp. You brought her here, the elder said. I did. She fought. She did. The elder stepped forward and touched May's forehead, then her belly. You carry life. But you brought life too. May swallowed, uncertain how to respond. She belongs, the elder said finally. If she chooses. May blinked. The moment cracked something deep inside her. For the first time since the mine collapsed, since the snow swallowed her, since her own family closed its doors and left her to die, she felt seen. Not tolerated. Not pitied. Toka said nothing. You didn't have to. His eyes said more than words ever could. They spent the night tending wounds, burying the fallen, and singing old songs to carry the dead. By morning, a new fire was lit in the center of the camp, not for mourning but for renewal. May stood with the others, wrapped in a clean blanket, hair braided by gentle hands. Her belly felt heavier now, but not as a burden. As a promise. The elder presented her with a name. One whispered in Cheyenne, then translated aloud. Woman who returned fire to the earth. May felt tears sting her eyes. She didn't wipe them away. Later, she sat by the river's edge, watching the water move like time, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always forward. Toka joined her, lowering himself to the mossy ground beside her. I don't know what comes next, she said softly. You don't have to. I thought I was nothing. Just a girl someone threw away. He looked at her belly. You're carrying a future. You held a blade. You stood between death and a child. She nodded. I'm still scared. Good, he said. It means you know what's worth protecting. She let the silence wash over them. The river. The wind. The camp rebuilding itself behind them. May placed her hand over her child again. The heartbeat she couldn't feel yet, but trusted was there. The world hadn't ended. It had only begun. And this time, hope wasn't something distant and unreachable. It was something she held in her hands.